A dog with 1.5 million followers just got stolen and eaten for $27. You've all probably seen or heard of Chinese people eating dog, right? Not everybody does it, but this story obviously doesn't help with the narrative. And more importantly, like, why? Now, this is Pickax, or Chuto is his name in Chinese, which literally translates to pickaxe, a border collie with millions of fans online. His owner, who is a travel blogger, was in Georgia at the time, the country, not the state, and he couldn't bring Pickax along with him, and so he left behind the dog with the parents, and when they were out in the field, this is in the rural countryside of Henan province, a pair on a scooter came in, kidnapped Pickax, and sold him off to a dog dealer, who then sold him to a dog restaurant for 180 yuan, which, like, when you convert it, it's anywhere between like $27 to $34. But there's also two different narratives as to how much money he paid. Then he was killed and eaten at a dog meat restaurant.
朋友们，我现在正在自驾格鲁吉亚，很难受啊，准备回国了。锄头在家里跑丢了，也是过了好几天了，我家里人才告诉我，我也让他们立刻报警，调附近的监控，但是直到现在还没有任何的线索。希望商丘的朋友啊，我们商丘本地的朋友有做狗肉生意的，能够注意一下锄头。
So many questions. I'll try to address them. Okay. First, why? Why would someone steal a dog and sell it for 180 yuan? Well, in rural China, which this seems to be happening in a province called Henan, that's where a lot of the petty theft and crimes happen. And 180 yuan is good enough to cover maybe a week or two worth of groceries or even just eating out for lunch and dinner. So it's a decent chunk of change. And the second reason is that they simply don't value the life of an animal. They see it as personal property, so it's not really considered like how the Western countries would view animals, especially dogs and cats, as, you know, some treat it as close to them as their own kids, right? And obviously dog owners in China that's a whole different story. They value the pet, value the being at a much higher level than what we're talking here. That's why you see there's so many of these torture videos of cats and dogs coming out of China, right? Thirdly, so based on, again, like I mentioned, this happened in Henan province. To a lot of the people that might not understand, Henan province is one of the most historical provinces. It's where many dynasties have, you know, their most history, like the most amount of, I would say, history of China came from parts of this province. And yet today it's a whole different ballgame. So you have, like I mentioned, a lot of these scams are from there, a lot of the bad things that happened that we've been covering for in terms of China news for the past few years has happened here. You know, a lot of the school scandals happen in this province as well. And so this is a hotbed of issues. And when you're looking at the rural area, this is where, you know, the laws, especially laws around pets, and there's also an argument, or at least some people made these arguments online about whether the dog was leashed or not. And or the other question was, you know, where were the identifications or dog ownership proof that you could provide, and all sorts of just excuses, right? But the point is, like, the core problem is that you shouldn't be selling a dog that you kidnapped for 180 yuan. And I think that's where people are really mad, both in China and shocked outside of China. Now, on May 23rd, the owner of Pickax uploaded a video saying that he has to go back to China as his dog went missing. And during this whole time, they have been looking for for Pickax. And then the next video he posted publicly was on the 27th of May. Here, he had already found via CCTV footage the kidnapper and the location, so he goes to confront the person. And you can see that his hands are shaking from adrenaline. And some people were even like doubting him. Is this all sort of you're making these videos for views, right? But in this case, I really don't think he was doing this for views. He just wanted to publicize what had happened. So first he asked the person if, you know, you've seen a dog around, and the person denies it, obviously. And then he then asks, it's a border collie, have you seen it around? And the person, this was to test if the person knows about dog breeds. And he says no, again. And this indicates to Pickaxe's owner that, you know, this guy clearly knows about the breed and probably has seen it.
我换一下。那天早上，你搁关上一直走去那边餐厅吃的饭，回来走到高铁桥下面，在那个高铁下面拿一只狗。现在你直接告诉我狗去哪了？卖到哪去了？
我给打电话，拿我手机。
我再给你声明一下啊，现在这个狗是我的，我网上有100多万粉丝，是这个狗的。
哦，他说他给人弄个烟了，给人杀了，有啥说的。
The kidnapper goes from denial to admitting that he did take it, but that nobody was around. And again, this is another lie, right? Because there was the parents of Pickax, or the parents of the owner of Pickax. And then he claims that he will pay back Pickaxe's owner the 180 yuan that he sold it off for. And he says, I can give you my own dog, the golden retriever, right? It's just a damn dog. Like, why are you so upset about this? Now, Pickaxe's owner pleads to know just like where exactly did you take the dog, right? And so he then in the second video tracks down the dog dealer and then tries to find out which restaurant he just sent him to. And then eventually they did get to the restaurant and they found out that he had been killed the same day he was sold. And when the owner asked for even a lock of fur as a keepsake, just something to hold on to, right? The restaurant told him that they threw everything in the trash long ago. So this is where this whole story ends for them, just trash. When the owner of Pickaxe tried to push back, and the kidnapper's response was simply, "It's just a dog. It's dead. Stop making a fuss." There was not even a sense of apology here or a sense of being sorry. Now here's the part that should make you even angrier. The owner wants to press charges, possibly for theft of valuable goods, since it's a pure breed meteor-colored border collie, and that could be worth tens of thousands of yuan, plus all the additional values he provided as a travel, or I guess a partner in the travel channel. And he says that he won't settle. But the thing is, under Chinese law, pets are classified as property. They're not living beings, property, right? So the entire case is depending on whether or not the court will treat this as a case of simple theft, or it's something that could escalate in more monetary value. But overall, it's only going to land the thief a maximum of 3 years in prison. And also, there's no sort of discussion on animal cruelty happening in this case at all, right? Online, but not in the legal side of things. So even though the man who kidnapped the dog has been arrested, the possible charges, again, are only under 3 years, it seems like at least there's sufficient evidence for legal basis to form a case around property, but not around it being a case of, imagine a killing of a dog, that type of thing. So the last video that was uploaded by the owner of Pickaxe was a simple statement, which basically reads like a PR statement. And in particular, there's lines that tell the internet users around China not to believe rumors, don't spread misinformation, which is the typical stuff that you get when people get threatened by the police or have been spoken to. So local authorities and police obviously know the story has generated too much attention, both in China and around the world, so that they want to tone down this. But fortunately for them, I guess, from the perspective of censorship, this is a story about a dog. It's not about a person. So it's much easier to control. And you saw that many internet users in the comment actually recognized that he might have been threatened by the police. So the story probably ends here, unless something explosive happens. Good thing though, this brings public awareness of something that they long denied, saying that China's still backwards, right? That they eat dogs and things like that. Like, again, I've personally never eaten dog, but I've seen there's dog restaurants in China. Again, that's just part of the current culture there. So even though there's no reason for the CCP to censor a dog story, I think if there were any reason to believe that this story is going to bring about any sort of change or even cultural discussions that are going in a different direction, we might see more censorship. But so far, it seems like the story has finished. And the dog obviously is no longer with the owner, and unfortunately, that's where things end. So thank you very much for watching this episode. Hope you enjoy the content. Let me know your thoughts about this episode in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think about this dog story. And once again, please subscribe to our new channels, David on China and David Zhang 360 if you haven't already. And until next time, bye-bye.